Probably eventually I'll do resources that aren't books, but right now books have been the most helpful thing to me because knowledge is power when you act on it. So today we're going to look at When Violence is the Answer, Learning How to Do What It Takes When Your Life is at Stake by Tim Larkin. It was life-altering for me. Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time, then welcome to my channel. I'm April Hardy, and you found the place where we talk about all things domestic violence related. First of all, I hope that you guys are enjoying the content that I've been putting out so far this year. We have talked about dreaming for planning for the future and finding the right counselor for you, and a free option in Al-Anon if money is an issue as far as finding a counselor, so that we can work on building out of domestic violence this year. I have heard so many times people talk about domestic violence or abuse, period, as being kind of a death sentence. Like, once you have experienced it, that's it for you. And I really don't believe that's the case. That's not been the case for me. And I want to help get you out of that. So in order to do that, then that takes some working on some trauma stuff, and that is going to take some working on belief systems and habits and patterns in your life, getting you to the point where you believe that you deserve better. And then once you believe, and a lot of times even before you believe, honestly, then making choices and behaviors that are going to reflect that. So I hope that you're enjoying it. I would love your feedback, and I will continue to put out information for you that is going to benefit your life. Now this week we're going to do another review of a resource. We're going to look at When Violence is the Answer, Learning How to Do What It Takes When Your Life is at Stake by Tim Larkin. I love this book. I haven't read it like over and over again. It's not like key reading for me in that way, but it was life-altering for me anyway. Let me just tell you a little bit about Tim first. So who is Tim, and why should you care what he has to say? This is in my notes. First, let me rattle off a few factoids for you. 1, he's a former military intelligence officer. 2, he's helped to redesign special operations personnel, how they're trained for close combat, because he's an expert in this area. 3, in his 25-year career, Tim has trained people in 52 countries about how to deal with imminent violence. And if you have been in a domestic violence situation that involves physical violence, it's an imminent violence situation. 4, he's a highly sought-after speaker, and he's the media's go-to guy for self-defense and victims' rights, which is going to become apparent why here in a second. 5, and part of what hooked me, is that he spent time in prisons studying inmates or criminals so that he can explain them to people like you and me. One of the things that really caught my attention about his book, is that he went into prisons and he studied the source. You know, obviously everybody who's violent is not in prison, clearly, but that's where a lot of people are that have that mentality. Like, it's the best place to study people with that mentality, that you're going to have the most of them in one concentrated area. It's really smart of him. His stance on violence and victims' rights is highly controversial. You're not going to be able to make any kind of a big statement in life without it being controversial. There's always going to be somebody that doesn't like it. And Tim's stance is that you have a right to defend yourself with the same weapon that is being used against you. Violence. Take it or leave it. But when you're in a life or death situation, you can defend yourself with peace, and you can die that way. Or you can defend yourself in like kind with what they're coming at you with, which is violence. So, when I read on the website that Tim has actually been banned from the UK for his stance on a victim's right to defend with violence against violence, I laughed out loud, and at the same time I beamed with pride. I laughed because I seem to be drawn to people who stand out in a crowd for as long as I can remember. So the fact that he stands out that much just makes complete sense why I would like him. And I beamed with pride because Tim believes in our right to defend ourselves so much that he's willing to not waver on it, even to be allowed into the UK. Like, that's huge to me. He's like, this is where I stake my claim. There are so many places that I have discovered in my journey through dealing with domestic violence and stalking and sexual violence and all of these different things where the victim just gets screwed. No pun intended. It is so hard to hold an abuser accountable, and they seem to get chance after chance after chance. Meanwhile, the victim has to rearrange their entire life. You know, I was actually told at one point while I was being stalked, and it was advice that was actually given to me legitimately, like they meant it, which is insane, that I should put powder on the insides of my windows so that I would know if somebody had come in through my windows to get into my house. And I might have to do it, quote unquote, a few times to establish a pattern of behavior. And that's how it is with us. You know, if it's a domestic violence situation, it may not be prosecuted at first. If it's a rape situation, it definitely may not be prosecuted at all. Most of them are not. If it's a stalking situation, even if it does get prosecuted, it's only a misdemeanor in most cases until they do it again. And it doesn't even matter how much fear you have to live in as the victim. It doesn't matter if you have to change your job, change your home, change the way your home is. If not changing your home, change your habits, change where you go. Like, you have to do all of these things. But they're given the benefit of the doubt. And Tim is just like, no. If you're in real danger, then you have every right to defend yourself. Really. Not put a little powder trail down so that you can establish that they have in fact come at you. But you can actually defend in like kind. What else do I want to say? I don't know Tim personally, but he had a profound impact on my life because, as I've shared before, and I can link in this video, the book, The No Bullshit Guide to Women's Self-Defense, was the first book that ever allowed me to believe that I could defend myself. Like, gave me permission to defend myself and gave me tools to be able to use and strategies. What it lacked was mentality. And When Violence is the Answer covers the mentality part of it. Like, I was armed. I was trained and fully capable physically of being able to do some harm. And I had stuff around my house, and I had, I was physically as prepared and capable as one can be. But mentally, I wondered, could I do it? Could I harm back? Am I capable of such things, even if my life is in danger or my kids' lives are in danger? And some people said, yep, you would be able to, and other people chose not to comment. But the truth of the matter is, there's stuff there that needs to be dealt with, and Tim deals with that in this book, When Violence is the Answer. He deals with our morality, and he deals with our decision making, and he deals with getting mentally prepared to be able to handle that type of situation in the only way that you really should handle those types of situations. There are 10 chapters in this book. Chapter 1, violence is a tool. 2, social aggression versus asocial violence. And he talks about the difference between like social aggression or social violence. It communicates something. It's communicating that I am in control. That's what it communicates. And so if you want to get out of that situation, you can placate that person by acknowledging that they're in control. And a lot of times they'll calm down and they won't get violent, or they won't get more violent. And as I was reading that, I was thinking about a lot of domestic violence situations where the aggressor is like, I am in control. Whether they're saying that with their mouth, they're definitely saying that with their actions. And when you submit, a lot of times they'll chill out. Not always, obviously, but a lot of times they will. And that's social aggression. It's communicating a message, versus asocial violence, which it makes me think of psychopaths. But it also, as I was reading it, made me think of school shootings and different other things. It's just, they're not going there to communicate. They're going there to destroy you or whoever is around. So when I think of intimate partner homicide, it has gone from social aggression to asocial violence. It's no longer about communicating a message. It is just about destroying that person. Or in the case of a homicide, suicide, destroying them so that nobody else can have them, and then destroying themselves. But I would put that in the category of asocial violence. So it'll help you understand those two types of scenarios and how to get out of them without violence, as well as if you have to come to violence. This book will address that. Chapter 3, Mindset Matters Most. That's by far my most valued part of this book. 4, the worst people have the best information, where he's talking about criminals and how they learn how to use violence, and they learn how to be on the offensive, not the defensive, and most good people don't. They don't ever even seek that information out, and then that's not helpful. Chapter 5, when violence isn't the answer. Chapter 6, the best target is the one you can get. And in that chapter, he talks about how self-defense things will teach, okay, so you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And then people get into those situations and life doesn't work that way, exactly in the order that they learned it in their self-defense class, and they're like, I'm lost because I did this, so you're supposed to do this, and then I know what comes next. And so he talks about how, I don't remember the exact wording, tactics maybe are not as important as your mindset, and therefore the best target is the one that you can reach, the one you can get. Who cares if you learned how to break somebody's foot if you only have access to their throat, or reverse? There are some interesting scenarios that he presented in that. Chapter 7, your brain is your deadliest weapon. Chapter 8, training time. Chapter 9, training to inflict injury. And in that one, I believe he talks about the difference between hurting somebody and injuring somebody. Because, women have this tendency to scratch at guys' faces or kick them in the balls. Those are the two go-to defense moves for females for some reason. Scratching somebody's face is just going to piss them off. It's not going to help. I have no idea why we do that. Why that's our instinct. And hitting them in the balls, it's kind of a 50-50 shot, because they all expect that you're going to do that. So either they will block it or they can handle it, and you're just going to tick them off more, neither one of which you want to happen. And then chapter 10, in the end. Tim's stance is that effective combat is all about shutting off your opponent's brain by creating a debilitating injury. He says certain areas of the body are always vulnerable, regardless of the size, speed, and strength of your opponent. For example, your eyes. Eyes are vulnerable, whether they're on a 4-foot tall adult or a 7-foot tall, 300-pound adult. They're always vulnerable, right? The breastplate requires the same amount of force to break on any of us. They do it for CPR. There are parts of the body that are soft, that are accessible, and it doesn't matter your size and strength or your opponent's size and strength. And that's what he wants you to focus on. And he wants you to focus on causing such an injury that the person is incapable of thinking about anything except for that injury. Take tasers, for example. A taser might stop somebody, but I have also watched people get tasered on purpose to show how strong they are, or because they think it's entertaining, and it does not faze them. It might hurt them a little bit, but it is not going to stop them. It doesn't even stop them when their adrenaline is not rushing, let alone if their adrenaline is rushing and they're trying to hurt you, and it is not a consistently good weapon, okay? When I was younger, people used to talk about holding your keys in your knuckles so that you could attack somebody with your keys. Now, is that better than nothing? Maybe. But unless you're going to take that key and drive it into their eyeball, it is not going to stop them from coming at you. And in fact, if they're close enough for that to work, because they have to be close for that to even matter to them, they're capable of doing a lot of harm to you, and it's just not effective. So I tend to side with Tim. In the book, Tim says that his goal is to change the way the reader thinks about violence. And in this book, he says that people overall tend to think of violence as something that is only used by two groups of people. It's either used by criminals, bad people, and so we see everybody that uses it as bad, and it's also used by professionals who are trying to get bad people, whether that be police, military, bodyguards, things like that. Those are the only two groups of people in general in our culture that have training in the use of violence, that have training in the ability to evade violence, training in the mentality of violence, and that puts the rest of us really in danger. Because when it comes to us and somebody who's trained, who isn't kept by those mental blocks, and we're on the defensive, our odds are not good. And then if you add to that the idea that I'm a woman and this person's a man and this person's bigger than me, and I've got all of those things going in my mind, I am not very likely to fight back. Or if I am, to be minimal in that, just as an example. Obviously, it can be a guy versus a guy, or a woman versus a woman. That's just an example, because that in that situation, like your go-to without changing the way you think is going to be, I'm going to get hurt. And protection, not defense. Something else that I wanted to note, one of the quotes from Tim is that I truly believe that violence is almost never the answer, but when it is, it's the only answer, and we all need to be prepared for it. And I wanted to include that because it's not like he's this violence-crazed person that's going around just inciting violence everywhere. That's not what he's saying. In fact, I don't remember what the amount is, but it was something like 95-98% of the time you're not going to need to use violence. There are other ways that you can go about things to be safe. You know, talking has a lot to do with a lot of things, but there are some situations where that stuff isn't going to work. And what he's saying is, when it comes to those situations, when violence is the only answer, he wants us to be ready and able to use it as a tool, just like money is a tool. Okay, money can be used by terrorists, and it can be used by churches. The money itself isn't the problem, it's the people that use it and what they would use it for. That's where the problem comes in. Violence is also a tool. It doesn't make you a bad person if you use it to defend yourself or to defend your children. That doesn't make you a bad person. It's a tool. And if that person is using violence to harm you because they want to get something from you, and that can go a lot of different ways, that makes them a bad person. It's not the violence part, it's the fact that they're attacking, and they're attacking to harm, and it's completely self-motivated, and they don't care about you. That's not the same as defending yourself. Totally different worlds. Tim addresses beliefs in this book. I believed that only bad people used violence, and I didn't believe that I was a bad person. I believed that a weapon could save me. I strongly valued grace and mercy, and those are two things that somebody that was trying to kill me could have cared less about. Even as I trained with a gun, I wondered if I would be able to look at somebody that I knew and pull the trigger. At least I was aware that I was missing that piece, and I looked for the answer until I found this book. I still believe that I'm an overall good person, but I'm aware that I might need to use violence to save my life or my children's at some point, and I'm much better with that now. I think that every woman needs to read this book. Whether you end up taking Tim's stance or not, he's going to inform you and make you consider what you believe, and that's invaluable. According to this book, 70% of Tim's students didn't seek self-defense training until after something violent had happened to them. If it hasn't already happened to you, be one of the smarter 30% and learn now. By the way, I would qualify as one of the 70%. I didn't start looking for help until well after I already needed it. Thanks for watching. I'll do my part to keep you safe by continuing to put out weekly videos about all things related to intimate partner violence. If you haven't already, please do your part by subscribing to this channel and hitting the notification button so that you don't miss a single video. Bonus points if you share videos with people that you believe will benefit from the information. Until I see you again, stay safe. It's a fantastic book, in my opinion, and Tim allowed me to be able to use stuff from that book in my own book, which I appreciate greatly, and we have communicated through email, and we've both communicated on Twitter, and he seems like an all-around nice guy, you know?